when you sit down to have lunch. That's a time where rather than working and problem solving, you want to say to yourself, okay, let me relax and enjoy my meal and appreciate my environment, appreciate my life. And by the way, that will actually result in you having better digestion and not get into GI problems that occur to a great extent because we're in the stress mode at the same times we're eating and trying to digest our foods.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Thrive State Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. B, triple board certified MD and performance and longevity expert. And on today's podcast, we talk about the amazing superpower of resilience. You know, resilience is one of those qualities that we have as human beings to be able to extend and to elevate our potential, whether it be in our health, in our relationships, or our businesses, is being able to handle stress and be able to transmute it so that we get to another level. And a lot of times we think that stress is a part of life, and yes, it is. But if we carry on too much of that, we get to a place of burnout and breakdown, and that's counterproductive to the person we want to become. But stress and pressure and change is actually a necessary step. It means that we're reaching a level that we're about to break through. But how do we handle ourselves in those moments? How do we recover from those moments? And how do we transmute that stress into our greatest human potential? We're going to reveal that on today's podcast. Now, before we get into the topic and before I introduce our podcast guest, if you are new to the show, welcome in. This is a place where I have the fortune of bringing thought leaders and experts in the worlds of health, longevity, epigenetics, well-being, performance, all that to give you the tools to take your life to a new possibility, to take your life to the next level, to bring you into what I call the Thrive State. And if you're returning to the podcast, if this show is giving you any value, please help this show grow by supporting it with subscribing, engaging with our content, and leaving a 5-star review wherever podcasts are heard. That's really going to allow this show to get to the next level for us to bring more guests, to keep giving you the value, the tools, the tactics, the techniques for you to get into your Thrive State. And as a free gift for all the listeners, if you want to take your life to the next level and just want a framework to start with, I have a workbook and module I want to give to you. Everything you need to know on how to create the habits in the areas of life that will move the needle to get you into that state of human performance, longevity, your most elevated human potential. Go to mythrivestate.com/toolkit and receive my Thrive State Toolkit for you to elevate yourself to the next level. That's a free gift for all of you. If you haven't already, also consider picking up a copy of my book, Thrive State, at thrivestatebook.com. It's been a #1 bestseller in health, wellness, and longevity, as well as preventative medicine. So check it out, thrivestatebook.com. Now on to our guest. Our next guest is actually a professor at UCLA, a colleague of mine in the field of human performance, longevity, but particularly resilience. He's got a new book out that I recommend everybody. It's called The 9 Pillars of Resilience, the proven path to master stress, slow aging, and increased vitality. I've actually got a chance to meet him because we both share the stage at a longevity conference, and he's none other than Dr. Stephen Sideroff, an internationally renowned psychologist, executive, and medical consultant, and expert in resilience, longevity, optimal performance, addiction, neurofeedback, and mental health. He's published pioneering research in these fields and an associate professor in the departments of psychiatry and behavioral sciences and rheumatology at UCLA's Geffen School of Medicine. He's the founder and former clinical director of the Stress Strategies Program of UCLA Santa Monica Hospital and former clinical director of the MuView Treatment and Optimal Performance Center. He has helped establish innovative training and treatment approaches in optimal functioning, mind-body medicine in the US, China, and Europe. He has hosted numerous longevity summits, and he's here with us today giving you the tools and the pillars for you to master that superpower of resilience. So ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy this conversation with myself and Dr. Steven Sideroff. Dr. Steven Sideroff, welcome to the Thrive State Podcast.
Thank you, Kien. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
I am super excited. We had an opportunity to meet as both of us were on stage at a longevity conference last year, and it's been a true pleasure getting to know you and for us to be able to collaborate and do some work together.
I agree. I think we're both working on some very important topics that really make a difference in people's physical, mental, and emotional lives. So it's good to engage in this conversation with you.
Not only is the topic here so important for peak performance longevity, but it's really approach of how we really enjoy this beautiful gift of life that we've been given.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Now, but before we dive in, there's a portion of the show that my audience is familiar with, the 5 to Thrive. 5 questions, game show style, 1,000 points each. And of course, the winner, if you do win, and very few people have not, gets a healthy meal on me the next time we meet in real life. So my question to you, Dr. Sideroff, are you ready to play?
I am ready. Do I have a buzzer I have to click on?
Question number 1 for 1,000 points was, what was your favorite childhood memory?
I would say it would be playing with my dog, Topper. That's probably comes to the top on my grandparents' farm and just running around with him on freshly cut grass.
Oh, beautiful. What kind of dog was he?
A Cocker Spaniel, black Cocker Spaniel.
Beautiful. 1,000 points there. Question number 2 is, if you had any superpower, what would it be?
If I had a superpower, it would be the power to stop the fightings going on around the world in Ukraine and Gaza and other places.
Oh, wow. And we're probably going to be hitting on some of that concept in our conversation today. 2,000 points. Question number 3 is, if I put you on stage with 100,000 people, handed you a mic and asked you to sing a song, which song would you pick?
It'd probably be Don't Worry, Be Happy.
Oh, wow. You don't strike me as a, what was it, a Bobby Farron kind of person, but that's a great song and definitely on brand with what you're doing. So
right,
3,000 points. Question number 4 is, what is your go-to ritual or, mindfulness technique that you go to after a stressful day?
I do a combination of heart rate variability biofeedback, blood flow biofeedback, and neurofeedback.
Wow.
Myself.
That's beautiful. I want to dive in a little bit there as to what those things look like, but we'll do that in the podcast.
They're great for resilience.
Question number 5 is, looking back at your life now, what are you most proud of?
There are a few things. One was I was my college 4-wall handball champion. A second one is getting a number of National Institute of Drug Abuse grant funds to do research, getting postdoctoral fellowships at UC Irvine and UCLA, and the writing of my book definitely is at the top of that list.
Well, congratulations there. 5,000 points, which means a healthy meal on me the next time we meet. And I can't wait to dive in, because what we'll be talking about is certainly your new book, The 9 Pillars of Resilience, and looking at stress and how so many people approach their life in stress that they can't really enjoy the gift of the breath that we get to have moment to moment. But before we even get into this, before I forget, because I'd like to get deeper, into the conversation. But since you mentioned this during the 5 to Thrive, was that HRV biofeedback and what that looks like. I think some people in my audience are aware of the neurofeedback, where you wear these electrodes and your brain's pretty much just teaching itself like brain waves, but what does HRV and blood flow biofeedback look like?
So all of these are designed to help a person reestablish the ability to self-regulate and self-regulate the nervous system. And so heart rate variability training monitors the beat by beat heart rate. And there is an optimal beat by beat heart rate in which when you breathe in, heart rate speeds up, and when you breathe out, heart rate slows down. And when you breathe at approximately 6 breaths per minute, you literally bring different physiological functions into alignment, and you encourage this. It's referred to as coherence. You encourage and you drive the body into this coherent pattern. And there are things that facilitate it. For example, going into an emotional state of gratitude, a positive emotional state facilitates that. When you go into a negative emotional state, such as frustration, anger, you get a chaotic pattern. And so it shows us the relationship between our emotions and our physiology. But so heart rate variability training is training your body into this optimal pattern in which you are reestablishing a balance between the stress component of your nervous system and the recovery or parasympathetic component. And that is at the heart of physiological health.
Got it. Now, is it a device that basically measures your HRV while you're doing different activities, and you're basically training what type of breathing, what type of thinking, optimizes the HRV?
Well, you can. It's very simple, and I have a device right here, because what it does, it literally just picks up. You attach it to your earlobe. It's a photoplethysmograph that flashes a light through your skin, and the blood flow gets picked up by this device.
Is that the heart math device?
This is a heart math device.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We actually have one that my partner, I gave it to her as a gift, and she's never opened it. But, well, that's beautiful. Now, so let's dive into this a little bit. We know that stress is the major factor of accelerating aging and really a key driver of chronic disease, as it basically, causes our genes to, upregulate inflammatory markers, decreases our immune response. But why are so many people these days having such difficulty managing their stress?
Yeah. Well, I'd say there are many reasons, but let's start off with the fact that we have a lot of structural problems that drive dysregulation. Number one, we have a stress survival response that's outdated. It doesn't match our environment. We still have a fight or flight stress response, and so every time we're stressed during the day, throughout the day, our body prepares, whether it's an appointment, an important appointment, whether it's a test we're taking, whether it's a conflict we're engaged in. Every one of these stresses that we face in our day, we mobilize a fight or flight response to handle. So our response, our survival mechanism is used in all these stress situations, so there's a mismatch there. We also have a developmental mismatch. And by that I mean we learn, and our brain literally develops based on the lessons of childhood, and then we apply those lessons as an adult. We don't question them. We don't say, I learned that the world is dangerous because my mother or father treated me in a certain way. We just assume that's the way the world is. And so we may start our day on guard, prepared for danger, whether there's danger or not. And again, again, mobilizing that fight or flight response. So we start with those mismatches. Next, and this is how I reframe the issue of stress, because I say that our stress response is actually a useful tool if we keep it within the sweet spot, an optimal range. So it mobilizes us and helps us focus. It helps us be more goal-directed. It motivates us. But that's, we need some stress for optimal functioning. But most of us push that stress level beyond where performance and health drop off. And so that's where the resistance comes into dealing with stress, because we instinctually know that our stress response serves us in certain ways, but we don't know how to keep it within this optimal range, and we always overshoot.
Yeah. One thing you just mentioned there, and I don't know if people are aware, was, certainly the things that have happened to us as children. We look at the famous San Francisco study where they looked at adverse childhood events, and they noticed that people that had more of these events, and those would include divorce, drugs, somebody in prison, neglect, abuse, they had more of these events as a child, they would have more physical health or outcomes, as well as mental health outcomes are very poor as well. So how does this emotional wounding and emotional reactivity impact our health?
It causes us to overreact in situations. It causes us to be on guard. For some of us, it causes us to procrastinate and not engage in behaviors, activities that actually cause us to be successful, because we are afraid of judgment. We're afraid of making a mistake. We're afraid we won't be perfect, and we have this rule that we must be perfect. So depending on the lessons of our childhood, there are many ways, as I just identified, in which it impacts our behavior. It impacts how we're feeling. And, notice before I said that positive emotions lead to a positive physiology, negative emotions to a negative physiology. Well, if we are emotionally wounded, we are going to carry some anxiety, depression. All of these things impact our physiology. And one of the keys that I talk about in my book is if you're striving for greater resilience, it's so important to have what I refer to as a growth mindset. Because we get wounded as children in different ways, a lot or a little, all of us in some ways. If we feel like we're branded by those wounds, like that's who I am, or if we're anxious. So I see a lot of people who have anxiety, and they feel like this is who I am. I'm someone who's anxious. We're stuck. We're keeping ourselves stuck in that state. And so I always suggest to people, you want to take a positive and growth mindset, so that if you're noticing that you're anxious, there are steps you can take. There's learning, relearning that you can go through to literally outgrow your anxiety, to literally identify that as a behavioral pattern that has been conditioned, and that you can actually learn a healthier approach to life and let go of that anxiety.
Yeah, that's so beautifully put. And I almost, encourage so many people, if they're not actually in physical danger, meaning there's no gun pointed at your head, you're not falling off a 10-story building or saber-toothed tigers around you, you can really look at those triggers of anxiety, worry, stress, hate, anger, those type of feelings, and use them. And, with some techniques I'm pretty sure you're going to show us, but maybe just with some breathing, you can create space a little bit between that emotion, and then start to ask yourself what is being triggered, because it's usually those programs that got placed in there that, our body feels like this is not safe. And as much as those feelings are uncomfortable, doing the work to uncover or excavate why this certain trigger gives you that bodily response, we can start to learn to rewire our nervous system towards those triggers. Yes?
Yes, of course. So let me give your audience a few very key aspects to this. Number one, I tell people that these behaviors, whether it's anxiety, whether it's difficulty falling asleep, they are not part of your DNA, right? They're not immutable. You can change them because it's all learned behavior. It's tough because it's learned over a long period of time, but we're also all blessed with what's referred to as neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity simply means that our brains are capable of rewiring, literally rewiring. And so the next thing that's so important for people to start the process with is coming from a place of acceptance. Most people start by feeling like there's something wrong with them, that they're where they're at because they're not okay. They get messages in childhood of, I'm not okay. And so we start by feeling like we first have to dig ourselves out of a hole before we can even get started on the path. And I say, no, you need to start from a place of acceptance of where you're at. It's like if you're on this journey through life, you're somewhere along this path, right? Let's say we're at point B. What happens with most of us is we're at point B, but we feel we should be we're at point A, and we feel we should be at point B. And we say that in our language says this, I should have done it better. I shouldn't have made that mistake. Why can't I be as good as so-and-so? All of these messages that we give us say that instead of being where we're at, we should be here. And as soon as we do that, we're undermining ourselves because we're giving ourselves a message, there's something wrong with me that I'm here and not here. And so the fastest way of growth is to start by accepting where you're at. It doesn't mean I'm okay with where I'm at and I can stay where I'm at. No, it means here's where I'm at. Now let me learn how to grow and get better. But I need to start from a place of feeling okay and good about myself rather than there's something wrong with me.
Yeah, I find that to be, such a key, because when you are there, you are not resisting what is happening. And typically I find that as you resist whatever it may be, it could either lead to a path of addiction. I need to get myself out of this feeling, or it leads to a path of, perseveration in that feeling. And I think accepting it is a great way of just allowing the feeling to set in and to continuously do the next steps of work. You talk a little bit in your book about the mind-body connection and how it plays a role in building resilience. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, of course. So, I've just talked a little bit about it when I referred to our emotions and how they drive our physiology in certain ways. But stress is a tremendous example of the mind-body connection. I can start my day in looking for what can go wrong today, and I'm immediately triggering my stress response. I can start the day looking for what can go right today, and I don't trigger my stress response. So it's a great example of the mind-body connection, how our thinking can drive which direction our body goes into. I talked about the imbalance between all the stimuli in our day that trigger the stress response, but we have very few, if any. Think about it. How many stimuli in your day trigger safety? I can relax. I could let down my guard. Almost nothing, right?
Yeah. I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you are, I just wanted to let you know, join our community. There's so many free resources and a great community of people that desire health, happiness, human potential, to have more in their life, more health, more energy. And when you have those two things together, you could create more happiness, more abundance, whether it be financial, romantic, all these things in your life. And if you're just starting out, you don't know where to go, just sign up for ThriveStateStarter.com, because in there you're going to get a bundle of information that includes a longevity ebook, a longevity and performance resource guide, lecture notes that come from my keynotes at Google, at Fortune 500 companies, all the insights in that keynote in lecture slide form given to you. And then finally, breathwork. I share 3 powerful breathwork exercises to access calm, which really gives you clarity and peace during the day, to access energy if you need to wake up and really motivate yourself, and finally a breathwork routine that you could do every single morning so that you could be very intentional with how you create that day. You could find all this stuff delivered free to your inbox at ThriveStateStarter.com. And our community is growing. If you want to be a part of a community of people that desire the Thrive State, that are really in Thrive State themselves, and help other people along with that, you could be a part of the community. You can get group coaching from me. We do breathwork sessions, meditation sessions, and you also get to drop in and participate in podcasts in the future. You could find more about the community at mythrivestate.com. That's mythrivestate.com. So check out those resources. You're not going to be disappointed, and please enjoy the remainder of this podcast.
Okay. So again, mind-body connection. How do we deal with this? We look for times and places in our day that we can refer to as, I'm in a zone of safety, or I'm on an island of safety. For example, when you sit down to have lunch, that's a time where, rather than working and problem solving, you want to say to yourself, okay, let me relax and enjoy my meal and appreciate my environment, appreciate my life. And by the way, that will actually result in you having better digestion and not get into GI problems that occur to a great extent because we're in the stress mode at the same times we're eating and trying to digest our food. So we're giving our bodies 2 different messages. On the one hand, I'm focusing on a problem, so my body says danger, stress response. When we do a stress response, we take blood away from our digestive system and send it into our muscles. And so if you want to have good digestion, if you want to really help yourself, if you have any GI problems, you have to realize that when you're eating, when you're having a meal, and for a short period of time after, you want to be telling your body and your brain, I'm safe, I could let down my guard, so I give my digestive system the opportunity to appropriately digest our food.
Those are excellent. And what I love also through your book is you talk about these other lifestyle habits that are so important for us to be able to even have more resilience. I certainly talk about these same things in Thrive State, but certainly our diet, our sleep, our exercise, our community, our social networks, a sense of purpose. I want to see for yourself, the practices that we can dive in, because I think the practices are going to be so useful for the audience. How do you start cultivating practices of gratitude or self-compassion and forgiveness? What do those look like?
Okay, so I've already touched on my first pillar of resilience, which is our relationship with ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that has to do with all the messages from childhood that we need to pay attention to. I talked about my 5th pillar of resilience, which is mental balance and healing. And there I talked about a growth mindset, and I talked about a positive mindset. So here we can talk about the 4th pillar, which is physical balance and mastery. And so a regular practice of mine is and I touched on it before, is the biofeedback. But I do it because it's a way to help my body stay in a place of balance between activation and recovery. I talked about how we have so many stimuli that trigger the stress response, but none that trigger recovery. And so everybody needs to find some form of relaxation, meditation, biofeedback that literally retrains the nervous system to go down to the deep levels of calm. So one that I suggest for everybody is one in which we breathe at around 6 breaths per minute. Mm-hmm. And we focus on gratitude as we're doing it. So what I like to tell people to do is visualize their heart. And as you breathe in, imagine breathing through your heart, and then breathe in a feeling of gratitude and love. So it's breathing in, gratitude and love, and then on the exhale, imagine your body totally letting go. Release your shoulders, release your jaw. Imagine your body sinking, melting into the chair. If you do this for 10 minutes a day, it will make a difference in your health. And I encourage all your audience to find 10 minutes a day. And if you have difficulty, then bring it down to 5 minutes. But find some time to do this practice on a daily basis. Now, many people will say to me, Dr. Sideroff, I'm stressed all day long. What is 10 minutes a day? How's that going to make a difference? The 10 minutes is not only training your body into that place of relaxation, but it's also an investment of your time, because every time you do it, you actually get better at doing it. And the better you get at doing it, the more you could take a 2-minute period of time or even a 1 minute and get value out of that. So the next step I encourage people to do is find some cue in your environment. I like to use going through a doorway, going through a portal. And I've trained myself that every time I go through a doorway, a portal, I remind myself to be present, my 7th pillar of resilience. And in that moment of being present, I check in with my body, I take a few breaths, and I let go. And I go into a place of appreciation, as I just mentioned, and then continue on my way. So those are a couple of very important processes that your audience can engage in that really bring in a few of the different pillars of my model of resilience.
Why did people, or why should people, learn to forgive?
Learn to forgive?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so you're doing a great job of helping me touch into my 9 pillars. This is pillar number 6, emotional balance and mastery. Most of us carry around unfinished emotional business. Feelings of resentment, feelings of anger, frustration toward different people in our lives. And I like to say that the only person you're hurting by carrying that excess emotional baggage is yourself. You may be angry at your partner, your parent, your child, but they're not suffering as a result. Only you're suffering because we're not able to hold in feelings just in our heads. Our bodies literally hold those feelings in, and that creates constriction in our bodies that interferes with the flow of energy in our body. And to some degree, this is the source of depression. When you interfere with the flow of energy in your body, you feel down. You feel, in fact, it's also a source of fatigue. And so forgiveness, or certainly accepting that another person is the way they are, they're not going to change, and letting go of whatever you're carrying, frees you up and frees your body up for the flow of energy that I'm talking about. And it also frees up your mind, because anytime you're carrying unfinished emotional business, a piece of your cognitive functioning is split off wanting to get resolution of that. So forgiveness, accepting, letting go, all is a process to literally help your brain function better.
Yeah, it's so important. As you had mentioned, all those negative emotions of resentment, anger is literally biochemical poison in your body. And I think forgiving is something that I think people can relate to. But how do they go through the process of doing so? Somebody stole $500,000 from you. Somebody hit your child on purpose. You get rear-ended by somebody. How do you go about doing something like that when the act seems so hard? What is your approach?
Yeah. So first of all, I accept in all these situations that it's going to bring up a lot of feeling.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying deny your feelings. I'm not saying ignore your feelings, but you have to find a way of appropriately addressing those feelings and allowing them to move through your body. So then you can let them go. If you try to let them go without going through the process of some expression of those feelings, it'll never happen. So I tell people, number one, recognize who you're feeling the feelings toward. So sometimes we're feeling them toward ourselves if we made a mistake. And some of us have difficulty letting go of mistakes, just as we have difficulty letting go of anger towards somebody else. So the first step is allowing yourself to know what the feeling is about, who it's connected to, and then find some way of expressing the feeling. Beat up on a pillow, yell or scream. You can imagine the person you're angry with in the room with you and express those feelings. Now, the key to releasing is that it's important to accept whatever happened. Not that you like it, but if it's something that happened already, you can't change that. And sometimes we get stuck because we don't like it and we don't want to let go because we have this magical thinking that there'll be some way that we can get a better outcome. No, the outcome is there already. So it's about expressing the feelings within the context of acceptance. Again, not that you like it. For example, you may be upset because you keep trying to get somebody in your life to respond to you in a certain way, and they just don't do it. Well, at some point, you have to accept they may never do it. Because if you get your feelings out, but you're still having an unreasonable expectation, new feelings of frustration will come up. So you do it within the context of acceptance. If you're dealing with a mistake that you made, one of the keys to letting go is the mistake has a cost. You just mentioned a couple of examples. So here's the cost of my mistake. What's the lesson that I could learn from this mistake to balance out the cost so that I'm less likely to make that mistake again? So you find the lesson, you find what you could learn in the situation, and then you say, the best thing for me now so that my performance moving forward is going to be better, so that I make better choices in the future and I'm not burdened by carrying these feelings. The best thing for me is to let go and relieve myself of this burden. And then you let go. And sometimes you need to go through that process a few times in order to fully achieve that result.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, I take people ask me those questions all the time. And, as you mentioned there, looking at the lesson, recognizing that every struggle, every challenge, every obstacle, every person that hurt us, if we look back at it, how have they made us stronger? How has they made us, learn something in life about ourselves or about other people? How do we become more resilient after this hurt?
Right. And so let me just say that a lot of people have this notion of resilience as the ability to bounce back.
Yeah.
And I say that that's the way we used to think about resilience. We have to think about it in a new way, exactly for the reasons you just mentioned. And you don't want to bounce back to where you started before the encounter, the stress, the challenge. You want to learn a lesson from it so that you're better prepared for the next one. And I refer to this as bouncing forward.
That's beautiful. And certainly anyone who goes through this process and it requires a little bit of practice as they're doing some inner work, but they'll start to understand that, it has hurt people that hurt people. And we look back in our own lives, I'm pretty sure we've done things to people and hurt them in ways and started to open that compassion. And I think a very useful forgiveness practice is a Hawaiian mantra called Ho'oponopono, which is the four phrases: I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. And it really shows, acceptance, gratitude, love, and deeply connecting. And you don't necessarily even have to have the person there, but if you think of the person in that incident and see if you could tap into those feelings, I find it to be very healing.
I totally agree. And I'll come back to my first pillar of resilience, which is our relationship with ourselves. And that's sort of foundational, because if we monitor our internal voice, I like to refer to as our internal parent, we will typically find that that voice can be critical, judgmental, or negative toward ourselves. And so I like to say that a healthy internal voice, a healthy internal parent, comes from a place of love, compassion, acceptance, support, care, and joy. And so that's the model of a healthy internal parent, healthy internal voice. So all of you out there can start noticing, paying attention to how you talk to yourself and compare it to the healthy way to talk to yourself, setting that as the goal to shift and transform your internal voice into that positive, healthy voice so that you have a better relationship with yourself.
So good. So great. And I purposely didn't go through all 9 pillars today so that people go and buy your book, The 9 Pillars of Resilience, which is already out. You can get it at bookstores everywhere. Now, before I ask my very last question, how do people find out more about you, your work, and where they can get a copy of the book?
So the book is available everywhere, in bookstores, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, other places. And it takes people step by step through an actual journey toward greater resilience, so that people don't have to feel overwhelmed by all of what they need to do, because it gives you a step-by-step process and lets you know when you're being successful, because I call that being on the path. And so my website is drstephensideroff.com. On my website, I have a free audio relaxation visualization download that people can go and get. And if people want to reach out to me, and I will offer a free gift to everybody, which is my resilience assessment booklet. And in that, I describe my model, and I give you a questionnaire that people can take and self-score and get their own personal resilience profile, showing them which of the 9 pillars are their strengths and which are their weaknesses. But in any event, the book gives you the whole layout of how to become more resilient.
Highly encourage anyone to pick up that book, because certainly it's a useful tool to use in your relationships, in your health, your business, and your entire life. Curious as to the answer to this question, but of everything that you've encountered in life, in medicine, and thus far, what has been your best medicine?
My own best medicine is recognizing that whenever I'm feeling upset, whenever I'm into this automatic stress response myself, that I have to take a time out. I have to stop. I have to give myself a moment to break, because I know when I'm in that pattern, my brain is not going to function at its best. So my best medicine to myself is taking that time out. And when I do that, I do the 6 breaths per minute, and then I go into a place of gratitude. I go into a place of reminding myself of all my blessings and all my gifts. And from that, and then how to optimally treat myself based on that positive internal voice. And once I ground myself in that place, I always come back out into the world better able to handle whatever I'm dealing with.
Such a useful tool, that timeout, to take a little pause between stimulus and response. Dr. Sideroff, appreciate your time, your wisdom, your love, and your brotherhood. And thank you for being with us today on the Thrive State podcast.
It's my pleasure. I've enjoyed it very much, and good to see you.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Thrive State podcast. And if you're finding that this content is really helping you and your family members, please consider supporting our mission and our cause of elevating health, happiness, and human potential for people all over the world. You can do so by making sure that you subscribe to this podcast, sharing it with your friends and family members, and leaving us a 5-star review wherever podcasts are heard. All these things are going to really help elevate the show and to give us the resources to continue to bring more content just like this to yourself as well as the people that you love. If you haven't already, you might want to consider joining our community. We actually have a community where people get to engage with me in group sessions, where we do breath work, meditation, where we do challenges together, really to be able to get us access to health, happiness, human potential, so that we could have longevity and performance in our life as well. You can check out our community at mythrivestate.com. That's mythrivestate.com. And if you haven't already, pick up a copy of my book, Thrive State. It really gives you all the tools, the pillars that you need to create a blueprint to control the energetics of your life. Who are you? How do you show up in the world? The choices that you consistently make create an energy in your body, and you can control this. And when you can control that, you also control the messages you give to your DNA that gives you access, again, to optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. And let me also just share a free gift to you. If you haven't already, please pick up my longevity and performance bundle, where I share lecture notes, ebooks, breathwork exercises, and longevity and performance resources at thrivestatestarter.com. Thank you so much for being a part of this community. Thank you for helping us grow. Remember always, my friends, that you are your best medicine.